Oh wow. Oh man. Oh yeah.
It's a big
Hey
night
everybody.
tonight. It's a big night tonight, Mac. I gotta get up a little early, all right?
I got you. I got you. This is Mac Antigua, and here from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we're doing a special edition of our Education Ed Reform Google Hang, pre-coaching Google Hang. Dan, we got to think of a better title for that because that's not catchy at all. Either way, you're watching us live. It's Game 7 of the World Series, and our special guest is a big-time Giants fan. So we're gonna do a blitz edition of this. But what it is we got my buddy, fellow alum from Milwaukee '94, and also the founder of the Eagle Rock site, currently the associate director at Eagle Rock School and Professional Development Center. Dan Condon is going to host us through this dilemma protocol, and he's got a great guest, a fellow alum, who's going to be our special dilemma guest for tonight. And we're actually going to do it again because we love this tool and we want you to learn about it. So I want to turn it over to Dan Condon to introduce our guest. Dan.
Awesome, awesome. Super excited to introduce folks to B, who I'll also let share her experience with you, but she's one of my very favorite alum from Eagle Rock who served on our staff for many years, and she just left us to work with a great school in Oakland that our Professional Development Center also gets to work with. So it's we just get to work together in a different way. And maybe B, do you want to take us through when you came to Eagle Rock and then when you joined the instructional team? And then I think it'd be helpful to talk a little bit about the MetWest context, because I think what people think about high schools is not what is happening at MetWest. So I think that might be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, shout out to the Giants, and I am a San Francisco native who moved to Estes Park, Colorado to teach and work at Eagle Rock School and Professional Development Center through the Public Allies program, which was going to give me the opportunity to be an intern and learn how to teach and still get an Ed Award, which was really important for me at the time. And so I moved there in the fall of 2008 and stayed on to become an instructional specialist after my PA year for 5 years, I think. And then I just recently left and relocated back to the Bay Area, and I'm currently at a big picture learning school in Oakland, California called MetWest, which in some ways is kind of the public school equivalent to Eagle Rock, in that they really honor the individualization of education and schooling. So they're really about individualizing learning one student at a time, and we currently have an internship-based curriculum, and so Tuesdays and Thursdays, all of our students, beginning at the 9th grade level, find internships that are based on their passions. They have to find, and then they secure them and have to show up to them every Tuesday and Thursday. So my job is also English humanities teacher and counselor and career and life readiness guide, and so I do a lot of different things like that. And so I'm not currently on any instructional lead team, although I was at Eagle Rock School. I was the coordinator for the the Critical Friends group that actually helped design and implement the adult learning for all of our staff, including Public Allies, well, soon to be alum, but like any folks who are in the Public Allies program, they would also participate in that adult learning. So I had a variety of experiences there. Was also a house parent. So I feel like hopefully my dilemma will be relevant to anybody who is in education, deals with young people, deals with like how do I set boundaries, and if you're just like a parent, like I don't know, I think it's relevant. So yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for being with us. I love it. I love it. All right, let's do it. Dan.
Yeah. So let's kick right into it. B is intimately familiar with Critical Friends group protocols, and so we're at it again with the consultancy. It's one of about 200 tools that School Reform Initiative uses to help folks look at things in a new way. And so for folks who may be viewing this after the fact, it's not about letting B know what the right answer is. It's Mac and myself kind of asking thoughtful questions to maybe help B take on a new view or frame of what it is she's challenged with. So there are a couple steps. We're first going to kick it over to B, who's going to talk a little bit about an overview of the dilemma with which she is struggling. And we talked a little bit earlier today while I was in Chicago, and we're gonna chew on a question toward the end of your presentation about the dilemma that will frame things through. But I'm going to turn it over to you, B, and you can give us an overview of the dilemma, and toward the end, we'd love kind of a succinct question that Mac and I can think about as we move forward.
Okay, so I'm going to try and time myself because I feel like it can be really lofty in my talking. So.
Well, just remember, there's a game on tonight. So.
I know. That's my goal. I'm trying to talk for like a minute and a half. So I am not a parent myself, but I'm teaching 9th grade right now, and I've been at for the last 6 years at Eagle Rock School, where my youth range from the ages of 14 to 20. And the philosophies at both schools, both MetWest and Eagle Rock, have been to individualize learning, to not have these like cookie cutter methods, not in teaching, not in relation. It's really relationship based. And so on the one hand, I see the deep power in that. But in terms of discipline and in terms of kind of setting some baseline expectations for behavior, it's been really difficult for me to feel like, on the one hand, a school needs to have some standard expectations for what behavior and responses to behavior need to look like, to be safe and to be equitable, but at the same time that we take into consideration students' experiences and where they're coming from, and my relationship to them. That maybe I might have created something just being in who I am that would be different if it was somebody else. And so my dilemma right now is that I've come from a school that has a little less, has had a little more room for being flexible, and where it was like, we try to do what's fair, not what's right, or, I don't know, there's just kind of, maybe that's not even the right phrase that we've used, but we've tried to do what's best for each student, and that sometimes that isn't always great for the whole community. But here, we have the same philosophy of like individualized learning, but then it feels like I really need to be, in order to be equitable, I kind of need to lay down the law with everybody the same way, even if it means I lose a piece of the individualization. And so I'm having this dilemma. It's really real for me. And my question is, how do I approach a relationship-based, how can I develop my own relationship-based system of discipline that's equitable and that's still individualized? Like, maybe this is utopia, but maybe that's like that, maybe it doesn't exist, but I feel like I need to have I need some other brains to help me think about that question. And I think for me the implications of this are like, how then can a school really systematize that? Are those two things compatible? Like, are those two things compatible? Realistically, like, are those things compatible? So I hope you got that. And I don't know if I got that. Dan, maybe I got that. But
awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I heard was, how do I approach or develop a relationship-based system of discipline that is equitable and still individualized? Yes. All right, so we're going to crack right into some clarifying questions, and these are just pretty factual, and I bet I was just at MetWest 2 weeks ago, so I may have fewer questions than Mac, but these are short, easy questions for me to answer before we get into some deeper probing questions.
Mm-hmm. I can start.
Go for it.
Because I'm really coming in new because I've never been to MetWest. So, B, how often would you say that you've had to, for lack, not to sound so esoteric, but like manifest, right? You've had to act on discipline according to the environment you're in. And I'll say this, sorry Dan if I'm talking contextualizing too much, I sort of hear this tension between the different environments you've been in terms of practicing discipline. And it sounds like to me that the current environment you're in doesn't necessarily come as easy, or maybe it doesn't seem as aligned. These words are coming to mind. So I guess I'm curious, how often have you had to implement discipline, let's say in a month?
So I would say I get about, in a week, I think there are about like 3 incidences. They're small, maybe. They're about like 3 incidences a week where I'm like, I'm going to approach this myself, or should I refer this, or who should it go to? Like, I have those questions about things about 3 or 4 times a week.
Got it. And during those experiences, it sounds like not only is there an external action that's happening, but there's an internal, almost like decision tree that's occurring for you. Is that clear? Or is that a?
Yeah, I don't think it's not very. I mean, I think the administration here thinks it's very clear. Like, you should be dealing with a lot of low-level stuff, but still report. I still just feel like I have a lot of like decisions I'm constantly making every day around that stuff. So there's low level things that sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna delegate this one, and it could have been low level, but I just have been dealing with so many low level things that I'm frustrated. So I give them to somebody else to deal with. So.
Okay. And just clarify for me, when you say give them to someone else to deal with, what does that look like? So hypothetically, you're like, all right, decision tree says, let someone else deal. What does that mean, let someone else deal with it?
Today, I literally just went over to the restorative justice practice, the restorative justice coordinator, which is really different. At Eagle Rock, we had the director of students, or the dean of students.
Okay.
And here, we have 2 principals, and we have 2 restorative justice coordinators, and they do all the discipline. So it's already that there's an implication there about how we view discipline is restorative, right? And so I just said to him, hey, this student just slapped this other kid on the neck thinking it was funny, and it wasn't funny, it was pretty loud, and he went over and had a conversation with the student. And that was it. Like, there was nothing else that happened other than like, hey, Malik, can you go deal with this? Because I'm tapped out, you know?
Yeah. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I'll defer back to Dan. I don't want to hog our question time.
How many staff? How many students?
There are about 150 students. 40, about 30, between 30 to 40 students in each grade level. And there's 4 grade levels, 9 to 12, so anywhere between 120 and 150. And then, let's see, I think we have about 25 people who are on staff, and about 10 of those are classroom instructors, are the advisors. So 10 of those interact with, maybe a little bit more. We have some, maybe like 15 are classroom instructors.
Got it. You got anything else, Mac?
Would you say that, Berta, would you say that number 3, do you talk to your peers in your room about like comparing the amount of discipline that has to be done? And if so, as I'm leading the witness, do you find that you tend to have more, or do you say you're par for the course compared to your fellow teachers that are dealing with these issues?
I think, so we have regular reports out from the restorative justice coordinator at our staff meetings, and yesterday he reported that our referrals went up, but but I'm not referring anybody. So I'm not sure who's doing the referring. I'm not sure. And so therefore it makes me wonder about this tension again between the individualized approach and the systemic method of doing the referral system, and if that's creating this idea that it is inequitable at our school, because if some people are using the referral system more than, let's say, doing the restorative conversations on their own, then it's going to appear that those kids are have more discipline issues. But if I'm not referring things because I think I'm dealing with them, but really I'm not, let's say, and they're not getting referred, then it looks like, oh, in Berta's classroom there are no issues, right? And I'm worried about what that's looking like. Like, I'm worried that maybe I'm being too loose, or that maybe the conversation should be like, are some people being too harsh, like relying too heavily on the system when it's being more individualized. So I would say I don't know, but I know that from the referrals that are going up, I'm not referring people, so I'm curious. That makes it actually raises more questions for me.
It's almost like, well, if you're not referring anyone, then everyone else is referring more, right? I mean, like, you're at zero, right? And everybody else is referring more, right?
Yeah, everybody else.
We don't know. Right, but we don't know if, like, the thing that they're referring is equivalent to something you just chose not to refer. That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what those are. So no, we don't have those conversations at my school. Not right now.
Okay.
Not right now.
And one more random question: Can students report? Or can students make that referral, if that makes, like, report? Or is it just...
I think they can refer. I think they can go to the RJ coordinator and say, I really need to work something out with another student. And then that's kind of like a referral. That's kind of like it opens up a new thing. So they can do that.
Okay.
Thanks. I want to check in on the question when you talk about how do I approach develop a relationship-based system of discipline that is equitable and still individualized. Now, are you looking to explore how you approach it? It's not like you're thinking about how to change RP or RJ at MetWest, right? It's kind of like, what are you doing? You know, currently you aren't referring, you're trying to have conversations. Is that the nature of the question?
Yeah, I'm not trying to look at how to change RJ.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's like, like something is not feeling good in your gut. You want to feel better about it. Got it. Okay. Why don't we move into some probing questions, and we'll check in on the question again at the end of probing. But again, these questions, Mac, I know you're pretty well conditioned at this point.
Trying to be.
I think the key is these are not suggestions couched in a probing question. And we're just looking for bonus points to see, like, B's eyes roll back in the back of her head and she'll say, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way. So we're going to crack into probing questions. B, feel free to answer these, or you're welcome, as you know, to say, I'm going to chew on that. Thanks for that question.
Okay.
So right now, probing questions.
Probing questions.
Probing questions, also known as, yes, where I try not to hide advice in a question.
Yeah.
Which I get flagged for at least once every time we do these things. At least I'm self-flagging now. It used to be you flagged me. Now I'm like,
I guess I'm curious. What do you think if you were to narrow it to, like, the barrier in developing a relationship-based system, what would that barrier be? Like, I feel like you were talking about Eagle Rock. You kind of know the way you'd want it to be. What's the hiccup, or what's the moat, or what's getting in the way?
I think for me, one of the things that makes it difficult to be purely relationship-based is that I am different people with different folks. So my relationship changes to different people. And so what works, and I was having this conversation with my aunt last night, who's also an educator, and I said, you know, what I can demand and the way that I discipline a student who is a first generation born in the U.S. Latino. For me, I feel like I know what works really well with that student and with that population of students. When I think about, and I can access certain things, like my language is different with those students. When I think about like a fourth generation Chicano student, sometimes my approach has to be a little bit different, and I have to just kind of like adjust, right? And then it's also different when I'm speaking to an African American student, and so I want to be conscious of like that. That's me, and my relationship is different, and because I have and I want to be conscious of my identity and theirs, that sometimes there needs to be, in order to prevent sort of a discrimination that maybe you don't anticipate or you didn't think would occur, that there needs to be some kind of baseline response. Like, sure, I could have had this really harsh conversation with this Latina student, and that might whip her into shape. But if I had that same harsh conversation with an African American student, and then they don't change, and then I say, well, it's that kid's fault, right? Like, I don't know that that's happened, but I can see how that's happening in other classrooms at the school, that like maybe they're using their relationships to hope that that'll change the behavior, and it's not. And so because it's not, some kids are being referred and other kids are not. And so I'm worried that that some students they're not getting what they need, because we assume that our relationships are the same with everybody, and they're not. So
it's gay. So
that's my concern.
The barrier is
the barrier.
Say again.
To me, the barrier is that my relationship with students isn't going to be the same, and I'm naturally gonna use a method that works for me with certain students that may not work with others, and so all those others, they need to know what the baseline is. And, they need to know what my baseline reaction is if our relationship isn't at a place where I can use that as a way to get them to behave in a way that's appropriate for the space. So I think that's the barrier for me. Also think probably the school district is a barrier, you know, like just like needing, like, I just don't think they believe that we don't have referrals, you know, like, like they need to see that there's some kind of discipline.
Right, like
this is the way it should be.
Right, if there was 0 referrals, that would be really suspicious. Like, there's no way that could happen, right?
So then I think we need like to say, here's the line. But yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks, Dan, for that question.
You got one, MacArthur?
This is hard because I'm trying. No, it's great. Well, part of it, what makes it hard is like, you have such a great analysis of it. So I have this fear of like, I'm just gonna ask a dumb question. I'm gonna ask a dumb question. So I'm trying to not self-edit. but I guess a probing thing for me. I'm wondering, do you, in your conversations with your, well, I guess you said you don't have conversations with your peers about that. Do you think you're alone in this viewpoint, or do you think there are others who share this concern? Not to say that you have the same answer, but a concern about the effectiveness of trying to create a climate, right? I mean, that's ultimately what discipline is for, right? To create a climate that's inclusive of everyone. I guess I'm wondering, do you think you're the only one that thinks this way, or do you think that this is a silent majority? Like it could change if there was. I'm just sort of wondering, you know, what. I don't know, and I don't even know if I'm in the right zone, but that's what's interesting to me now. So I'm ready to be refereed back if that's not the right question.
Well, thanks for. I love your use of the word refereed there. It's nice. But
I'm tired. I'm tired of
whistle on some people in a meeting soon. I feel like I should use that. So like I think that there are others, and that's kind of the beauty and the curse of being at a place where a lot of people are super analytical about their work here, and then like 5 people are in grad school and everybody's doing data digs and all kinds of stuff and like crunching numbers and all kinds of stuff, right? And so it's super interesting. It's such a different environment. And I do think that it's a tension. I actually heard somebody say it yesterday in the staff meeting, like, here's a real tension we have. So, and I just felt like it felt relevant for me to bring up because it keeps coming up for me. Yeah.
When you, well, I wonder if, and I'm going to put a link up here because I find this really helpful when thinking about this stuff. So when you think about the social discipline window,
How do I?
Yeah, does that help you? And I'm going to put the link in so Matt can check it out. But where do you fall? Does that help give some thoughts about how to get to the width? Is being individualized more permissive? What does it make you think about?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this resource again to my forefront because I hadn't seen it actually since our professional development at Eagle Rock School. It's been since I've seen this. But, I would say that sometimes I think for some students it might be a little bit neglectful.
Yeah.
And it's in that, if I look at the box of neglectful, it's on the top right-hand corner of the box of neglectful. We're so close to being really restorative, but with some students it's closer to permissive. With some students it comes down punitive. And then for a lot of students, when we don't do anything because we lack a structure, it feels neglectful. We know this is a problem. We know with which students it's an issue. And because we don't want to make a strong statement on it, we don't do anything.
Yeah.
And so, and I mean, any parent can tell you if you don't. I think I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that because.
Well, ask Mac. He's a parent.
I'm a parent.
So I don't know. I just feel like if you just act like your kid didn't do something, they're going to think it's probably okay, or they can keep getting away with it.
Yep.
And so, if kids are cutting class and just skipping out, you know what I'm saying? And then there isn't any structure to get them back into class or have them feel the consequences of showing up late, which we're trying to get around. But, I would say we're in that corner. And then there's a lot of other amazing things that happen that I think are totally restorative. But I just wonder, there's a tension in there of how many things are with versus how many things are neglectful, and is that just going to naturally happen in any school? Should I just be accepting that that's going to happen? And maybe I need a paradigm.
Yeah. Let's do a couple more. I think when I reflect on your question, B, it's about how to develop a system, right? But is that even possible? Is my big question, right? If it's truly individualized and relationship based and you're code switching, what is it a helpful guide? When you talk about system, what do you a system would give you clarity, but what other benefits would the system have for you? Because it seems like you know what to do, but is it that it's labor intensive? You aren't sure if it's serving the students that need it most?
I just feel when in any teacher and any adult, you get tapped out. At some point you're I've got no more to give. And so for when those things happen, there needs to be a fail, not fail proof, but some kind of something for me to lean back on and say, I don't have the relationship to develop this thing or work with this thing through with somebody else, but here are the things that I can do. And I think those exist, but I'm not sure, like, but they're just like, let me just have you talk to somebody else. And I'm not sure that that's really the response that's helpful for students. In keeping their behavior appropriate, in helping them know that there are boundaries.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it also sounds like in that situation, I just had this image of like you just literally like, hey, go talk to that person, right? And so in that which may be the protocol, but for the future, right? Not to say it's a transaction. That person, right? That student will just imagine, well, I guess the expectation is I go to you and I get bounced, and what I'm hearing you say is that that's the current way it plays, or it could be appearance of, and that sits wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right? Or that doesn't sit with you well. I'm just asking.
It feels the same as like having a dean. It feels the same as just having a vice principal who you're like, go to the office, and I feel like we're supposed to be different than that.
Yeah.
Or maybe really in reality is what we're saying, like maybe kids need that. Like maybe they need to know that there's a kind of a soft, flexible line with the teacher. Although there's a lot of teachers who would not be comfortable with that.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And then there has to be like the hard line dean or some other like person who's external, who doesn't even know what's happening in the classroom. He's just like, sit down, we're gonna talk. I don't know. So, yeah.
What's do you have one, Mac? Maybe we'll wrap these up.
Yeah, I guess that my last question, and maybe I apologize ahead of time if it seems too hypothetical or too esoteric again, is that what do you think what would you say is ultimately the goal of the system that you have in place? Right. So, and maybe that sounds like a dumb question, but like, I guess for me, or this sounds dumb when I say it out loud, but obviously the system that you have in place is unique because it's not like other places, right? So I'm just sort of wondering, like, what about this system is the result that ideally it's trying to get, and I'll just leave it at that and let you do the rest, do the heavy lifting.
Okay. I mean, I think the goal of it right now is to leave some freedom for advisors to build relationships and use those relationships to shape and guide young people's development in choice making and decision making. And there's a lot of trust, right, given to the adults in this, that they will, have the students' best interest in the outcome and in the process of like restoring the harms. But I think an unintended consequence of that, which is not what you asked me.
But that's exactly what I was hoping you'd do.
Is that an unintended consequence, though, is that what happens is we have some students who get to know their advisors and know the limits and capacities of those advisors, and will test and test and test. And then we have other students who, without any real strong structure, really flounder and like need a lot more. Like they need a sandbox to play in, and other kids do really well in like just one of those crazy open playgrounds, and that we're not meeting the needs of every student in this super loose, individualized approach. And so, and I think that there's also something probably deeper in my own opinion there about like, is it possible then to really have this kind of system that's relationship based only? And I think that there's probably folks out there, and even folks at my school, who would disagree with me that we need more standard ways of responding to behavior. But I mean, we like at the beginning of the school year, we had this whole like hour-long discussion about whether or not we would allow pajamas. You know, like, right? And Dan is laughing because we taught at a boarding school where kids showed up in pajamas all the time, and we voted that no pajamas were allowed. And we had a long conversation. Although again, like the analysis is crazy, right? Like I'm like, oh my God, freaking decide. Like the principal needs to decide. Like and we're extremely democratic in our process, and I'm just like, oh my God, I can't deal, right? But I really learned something there about that. This is why it's a dilemma for me, because I want to engage in this process at the school level, but I also need to feel like I need to do some prior thinking on it. And I think I'm already sort of shifting my mindset about it just in our 30-minute conversation now, or 45 now, but you know.
I know, and Kung Fu Panda awaits, so we don't want to keep Kung Fu Panda ready. But just in that, Dan, apologize, but you really struck a chord when you talked about that decision making about pajamas, and it took an hour-long thing. It sounds like to me that you'll get weary not just being in the classroom, but this other stuff makes you weary, right? That you have to devote mind space to going, guys, pajamas, no pajamas, and let's have a critical analysis of colonization and blah, 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 right? And it's like at the end of the day, it's just pajamas, right? Is that the deal breaker or not? So I wonder how much of that plays into the fatigue, perhaps, or the
Okay, I want to move us because Monty's going to be upset if you don't get home to watch the game. I want to check in on the question again. Thinking about approaching, developing a relationship-based system of discipline in your classroom that is equitable and still individualized. So it's more about like what you want to create in your sphere of influence. We aren't talking about the school. So does that still, it sounds to me like that's still the dilemma we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mac and I are just going to, I think we're just going to throw a couple thoughts out. This will be truncated. And then maybe toward the end we'll just move into a discussion and hear where it is you may have shifted. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So no offense, we're going to pretend like you aren't here, and I'm just going to talk to my friend MacArthur.
Hey.
Hey, buddy.
It might be because I have NBA on the mind, and that the Bulls Knicks is about to tip off in 15 minutes, so that's why it's on my mind. But like I kept thinking reffing, right? Like that was the analogy that came on. Like you have a game, NBA game, and the important thing that, and I don't know if it's a great analogy, but it just kept coming up for me that what I heard B talking about is like ultimately the ref wants to make sure that the game is played well, right? Like the game, and there's certain refs that call certain things and certain refs that don't call things, but ultimately the judge of a good ref is a ref that facilitates the game so that the game is played within the spirit of the rules, and that but also that the competition flows, right? And so there are some interesting analogies that came up to my mind because I almost think like maybe B and her fellow teachers are kind of like those refs, right? There's some refs that you know that are going to call every ticky-tack thing, and then some refs are going to let them play and focus on certain aspects of it, and that there is a gamesmanship that the players understand who's roughing it at some certain time and are gaming it, and that's just part of it, right? Like until maybe they have cameras and the cameras call all the fouls and rules, but we're not there yet, right? So I think the thing is that we just accept is that in the game, again, maybe is belaboring the point, you know, and this is in baseball as well, like the umpire or something, right? That they're a part of this experience too, right? There is a reason we don't use computers to call everything. Like that's part of the dynamic, and that's what part makes it unique. And I guess as she was talking, that just kept coming up for me in my mind is that, you know, as you know, the NBA does have rigorous analysis, right? They do have videotape, and all the refs get analyzed on how they call the game, and they do get evaluated. So there is a rigor in it, but at the end of the day, no ref calls the same game twice, like the same way. So I don't know if that helps or anything, but like I just couldn't help but have that image, and maybe I really want to see Derrick Rose play. Maybe that's
and that's okay, and that's
okay. Yeah, and that's okay.
Right, as long as it's in the sandbox, as long as it's within the values of what MetWest has created. I mean, I think you know early on, B talked about fair and not equal. And so it's, I mean, my sense is that it's hard to be relationship based. It's hard to deal with folks as individuals, and I also wonder if I mean, Bee's a new staff member. Will this get easier as she builds relationships with students who she's known since August, right? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's relationship based, it's only building those relationships that continue to build those relationships. Seems that that is what's going to help with this craft of making things more equitable and individualized, right? Like I think to students I advise, and when I first started with them, I certainly didn't have the relationship, and it was much harder to hold them accountable and have those difficult conversations than it is now. So I wonder how much that plays into it. Invite them in, B. It's cool. She's not even here, so it's fine.
I had to mute myself for just a moment.
Oh, no worries.
I was listening. Yeah.
No, you're all good.
Dan, the other thing that sort of came to mind, because parenting came up, and so my ears pinged on that, and I have a 9 and 7-year-old, so it's not necessarily the target group that we're talking about, but
having add them together, it is.
Yeah, add them together. But you know what? I have changed significantly now that I've had kids, in sort of how I look at discipline or trying to create it, and again, I don't know if there's any application, but I just sort of share it in that way that I'm trying my best to be very transparent about like what is the outcome we're trying to get, right? As much like even though they're 9, like it's like, it's like, oh, hey, you got to do your 20 minutes of reading. I don't want to, right? And this is not the best example, but it's like I try to sort of frame it like, what is the, why am I right now trying to get you to do this 20-minute thing? Why am I trying to instill this discipline, right? And the reason why I'm instilling this discipline. Okay, here's a better example, right? The kids love to watch television. Duh, right? They love watching television. But like in the morning before we go to school, right? Like they try to get TV in, and what I know is that like they will like wait till the very last second before they get out to school and we get our morning thing going. And so I'm always like, hey, guys, let's figure out. You can watch TV, but like we need to do A, B, and C before that even is happening, right? And so when there's so my kid just sent me a note. I will do that. So what happens is, sorry, I guess to cycle back. When I'm clear with them, like why, like they want an objective, they want to do something. But when I'm clear with them, hey man, this is what I want for you, or this is why I'm choosing this. Like even at 7 or 9, they're very receptive. Like they get the logic, right? Or they're starting to understand. Okay, this is why he's hassling me about the 20 minutes, or this is why. Like I try to connect it to things as much as possible. And again, it's not to be advice, but I don't know. Sometimes like when my kids do stuff that's dumb, because I do it a bunch. Oftentimes I'll just go, instead of yelling, I'll just say, hey, hon, tell me what universe that we exist in that was a useful activity. Just tell me. And she can't. She's like, I don't know. So why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I don't know. Right? So like, so I guess it's interesting. Like even saying out loud, I'm always trying to like not like react like discipline, like do this because I'm always going like, how is this getting us to where we want to go? I guess that's always, and I wonder, I don't know. It seems like that's what individualized process is trying, is getting it so that people get to go where they want to go.
Well, as long as the students buy into the we.
Where do they go? Yeah, the we. I guess that's what it is.
Because if they aren't bought into the values of the school, that's like a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole other hour. Hey.
Okay, let's invite B back into the convo. And I put a little emoticon at the end of the group chat there. That was exciting. Where are you at? We're coming up on the top of the hour, but
Yes.
So,
Yes.
we've been at it for 53 minutes. What's up?
Yeah. I think, Mac, your analogy about the referee, I was just thinking about that because, because of this baseball game, right? And I was like, they say this umpire, and I like to listen to it on talk radio because I commute. I go from Oakland to San Francisco. So I'm on the Bay Bridge, right? And I've got like a cool 45-minute commute, and they say, well, this is, I forget the name of the umpire, but whatever his name is, right? They would say, this is his strike zone. This is his strike zone, right? So that players needed to know who their umpires were, right? They might understand the rules of the game, but that the width of the box, right, of the strike zone was a little bit different under Vargas or whoever. And so, and the same is true in basketball, right? Like, they have these huge rule books. Like, it takes forever to become an NBA referee or to become an umpire, right? Like, there's a reason all those guys are super old. There's a reason that, I get it. And they have to be well-trained and all this stuff, and they know the rules of the game, and yet it's still their call. And there's one guy who's in charge, and it's their call. And people have to just trust it, and together as a team, you have to stick with each other, and that's kind of the key for me as well in any situation, whether it's two parents, whether it's a grandparent and a mom, whoever. It's if there's discord there, that's probably worse for the team or the player or whoever, because then it gives them an opportunity and an out. And so regardless of whether the system was there in place and that's the only system, if there was ever discord about how that system got laid out, that's when sort of the boundaries get really blurred. Whether it's relationship-based, somewhere in the middle, or really far and, punitive on the other end. So I think that's kind of the big takeaway I have for me right now. And I just have so many applications for how this is relevant at Eagle Rock. It's amazing. So, it'll be good.
How about slip?
I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about how differently my experience is here.
Got it.
Compared to Eagle Rock. And for me at MetWest, I feel like it's very clear that there are systematic ways I have to be, right? Because there is even a referral system, because there is even like a dean and a principal and then the superintendent who wants to look at those numbers. Like, I have no wiggle room around those things. But at a school where it was more relationship-based, it makes me wonder about the decisions I made then that are leading to some of the discord I'm having even today.
Yeah.
So
what's kind of, as we wind it down, do you feel like you have a next step?
I think I want to talk to my aunt about just like what we were talking a little bit about this last night. So I want to pose to her, bring some of these ideas forward. And my grade level teacher partner and we talk a lot about discipline because he came from a way more traditional school than I have ever been at. And so we talk about discipline a lot. And so I'm going to have a conversation. So just more relationship-based actions. Nothing systematic. And I know it'll come up again at another staff meeting. And so I feel like I'll be a little more prepared and thoughtful about how I'll participate.
Awesome. All right. I think that about winds us down. It was great to see you, B.
I know. Good to see you again, Dan, and great to meet you, Mac.
Yeah, thanks so much for letting us.
Arthur, I don't know.
Mac works. Mac's it. Yes. But I appreciate meeting you here, but also you sharing your time with us. And Dan, thanks so much for doing this. Like, I know I don't look at it as just us three. I think that B just had the benefit of having all of our attention. And think about all those folks out there. Right? Right.
How lucky I feel.
We're giving this stuff away. Come on. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, I don't have anything else. I'd love to get on the road because I have to get.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I'm actually, I'm going to see you next week, Friday. So.
Oh yeah, I'll see you next week, Friday. That's right.
Awesome.
Well, Mac, whenever you're in the Bay Area, hit me up.
Right on.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Stay tuned. We'll be posting the next one hopefully next month. Thanks again, Dan. Thanks again, Berta.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night.